We just had the first Divisional Cup of Season 3 and Focus and Th0masHD won in style. I'll talk about their performance in this video. I'll discuss all the other teams that did well. But before any of that, let's talk about MrSavage and Velo, because they had an absolute roller coaster of a tournament. Now, they were contested over at Shaken Sanctuary by Prism and Casper for the entire tournament, and things did not go according to plan. They started off by dying off spawn in game 1. They couldn't play out any of their end games in their second and third matches. Things were not going well. And in game 4, it went from bad to worse. The off-spawn battle for Shaken Sanctuary is a complete 50-50, and Velo does lose immediately, but then he decides to back out of the game, leaving MrSavage to play the rest of it out as a solo. Now look, the cup hadn't been going well for them, and I can appreciate that there was a lot of frustration, that you simply cannot be backing out of a game like that in these top level tournaments. It's just not a professional thing to do. And listen, we all know that Velo's biggest weakness is the mental side of his game. He does tilt very easily. And this was something that we knew would be an issue when he did form with MrSavage. He's got a lot of ability, and I want to give him a huge amount of credit, because the truth is MrSavage was not qualifying for any Divisional Cup finals before they formed. Since they got together as a duo, they've made 8 out of 8 finals. Every single one that they've queued together, they have qualified for, and a lot of that is down to Velo and how much of a genuinely good player he is. But listen, he does really have to sort out the mental side of his game. We know that Velo and King Cringe used to argue a lot when they played together, but this is something that won't really work with Savage, because he's just a chill guy. I mean, he's just trying to vibe, he's just trying to play Fortnite. He doesn't really want to be shouted at 24/7. And this isn't something that's come out of the blue. It's been evident in previous tournaments that Velo is getting a little bit too tilted. When he gets eliminated, there's often a lot of shouting. Savage has even been taking his headphones off afterwards to avoid having to listen to the noise. Now look, directly after this had happened, the vibes were incredibly flat. Velo had left the call. I was genuinely thinking this could be the end for this duo. Of course, Yapko is looking for a new teammate, so I thought maybe he'd reform with Savage. But no, out of absolutely nowhere, they then go and win the next game. A real turnaround that was very unexpected. Velo had a pretty muted reaction to the win. He did apologise for leaving the game over on his Twitter after the tournament ended, so it does seem like he's really learned from this event. Hopefully it won't be repeated, because I do think that if Velo and Savage can figure out the vibes, if they can play together without any issues, then they do have real potential. The key thing for Velo will be finding a way to enhance his passion for the game, which does make him so good, without letting his emotions spill over. Now, they finished 17th overall, which honestly, considering they were contested, is a pretty solid return. One thing to note is that these guys are now being coached by Sven, who is one of the best Fortnite coaches in the world, so maybe the future for these guys is looking bright after all. Yes, the vibes do need some work, but I'm confident they can be recovered. I'm really interested to see how they get on in the rest of the tournaments this season. Now let's get into the top 10, and in first place we had Focus and Th0masHD. They put in an incredible performance during this tournament. Of course, they are landing over at Heatwave Harbour, which I have to say is looking like it may be the strongest POI. There's access to mythic weapons, great loot, there's hills around, there's good materials, there's not really any downsides to it. Now look, one key thing to note about these guys is that this was their first ever Divisional Cup finals whilst being coached by Raz. Of course, Raz is the coach of Peter Bottom Poyo, and winning it the first time of trying, that's a pretty big deal. Their placements were just so consistent. They didn't actually get that many eliminations, but that was okay. They didn't even need to. Focus was actually on 60 ping for this whole tournament, so big credit to him for doing so well despite that disadvantage. They won game 4 to go into first place, and they didn't drop out after that. They just looked so assured, so confident, and nobody was going to beat them. In terms of some of the things they did well, they used the classic Sky and Stroll strategy, where one of them sat in a surge base whilst the other one was down in a POI refarming. A tried and tested formula, and it did enable them to stay above surge all throughout the tournament. There was this moment in game 4 where they had some great awareness to somehow figure out that there was a team lurking in their POI. I don't even know how they managed it, but they bought a scanner, figured the team was there, and were able to survive without getting lurked on. They actually went on to win this game, so had they been lurked on there, that would have completely derailed their tournament. A really stylish tournament from them. They played some quality Fortnite. This is their second Div Cup win off the chapter. Of course, their last one was in week 4 of season 1. Can they build on this in the next 3 weeks? I certainly think they will, because they're looking really, really good. Now, I want to give huge credit to the team that were in second, which was Vico and Malibuca, because they were contested every single game and they still nearly won the entire tournament. They had an unbelievably strong start. They split Lifty Lodge in the first 2 games with iDrop and Fredoxy. They went on to win game 1 with 16 kills, just insane stuff. They then got 4th in the subsequent game to put themselves in first place with a 67-point lead after just 2 matches. They did well off spawn. They managed to win 3 times, only going down once, but ultimately, had they not been contested, had they not gone down in that one game, potentially they could have won the whole tournament. Although in all honesty, the moment that did actually cost them came in game 3, where Malibuca went down after getting eliminated just before the end game, which left Vico as a solo. Had they had a strong game here, they genuinely would have won the cup. But look, this was still a really solid performance from the Summitland champs. They came second in the final game, pushing Focus and Th0masHD all the way. Vico in particular was ridiculously good during this cup. He had 26 eliminations, the most by a mile. He also had the best damage ratio, proving once again, as I always say in these videos, he is such a talismanic player and so explosive. And winning the spawn fight 3-1 against iDrop and Frodoxy is pretty impressive. I have a feeling that this won't be the last time we see these two duos battling it out. Continuing down the leaderboard, in 3rd place we had Shark and Teeny, and as expected it was a good showing from uncontested Calamari Canyon. They were many people's favourites to win and they did okay, 2 second places in the 3rd, but the other 3 games were all outside of the top 10, which ultimately did cost them. Now at the Summitland, Teeny was the player that dominated, but in this tournament it was Shark that was on fire. He had the 2nd most kills, the 2nd most damage, and he solo clutched 118 points, the most out of any player, so he really did his job. It was solid stuff all round from them, they just couldn't secure the win on this occasion. In 4th place we had a team that I definitely did not expect to see this high up, which was Ping and Haris. Now they were meant to be landing over at Wonky Land alongside 2 other teams, but they decided to land on Konbek and Seti right at the north of the map, and this was a great decision. They didn't go down to them once off spawn all throughout the cup. This is a fill duo, this isn't even a confirmed team, but after this performance I do wonder if they will stick together. They started the tournament very well, they won back-to-back matches in games 2 and 3 to put themselves in 2nd place. Unfortunately they did struggle after that, but 4th is still really solid, a real overachievement from these guys, very impressive stuff. In 5th place we had Cami and Hari, and it's nice to see them doing well. They found a nice split on the map, they're getting on with their game, keeping their heads down. I liked what I saw from them. They were unfortunate to be lurked on in game 6 in the tunnels, and that completely ruined their game. They got stuck there in the storm and it did lead to their demise, but 4 out of 6 games inside the top 10 is really good consistency. Hari also was great from an individual standpoint, he had the highest damage. I will say he is consistently at the top of these damage leaderboards, his output is genuinely ridiculous. This is the exact kind of performance I want to see from Cami and Hari. They have slightly underperformed over the past few months, but it does look like they're starting to hit a little bit of form. We know that these guys are very adaptable, so when it comes to the start of the new season with a new meta, they are of course very good at figuring stuff out, and I feel like this could be a strong season for them. Let's see how they get on. In 6th place we had Pablo and Chino, a bit of a slow start, would have liked to have seen them do more from uncontested Sinister Strip. They had a nice comeback midway through the cup, a 5th, a 3rd and a 2nd to recover themselves a little bit. Not too shabby, but I do think they could have done a little bit better and they probably won't be that happy with a 6th. In 7th place we had Chap and Flixie, and this was a bit of a weird one because it didn't really feel like they were in the running whilst I was watching the tournament, but they kind of popped up in 4th with 1 game left out of nowhere. Their last match wasn't great, but it's nice to see that these guys are finally performing, building on their Globus qualification from the Summitland. It looks like they have turned a new leaf and I liked what I saw from them in this cup. In 8th place we had Pradaj and Trexa, and it's been a while since Pradaj has top 10 the Div Cup, so fair play to him. He's a player that has so much passion for the game and I'm always happy to see him doing well. Trexa is someone that had a very rough start to 2026. Before this cup he'd only made 1 of the past 11 Divisional Cup finals, which is a very poor record, but it does seem like he's also turned over a new leaf and I'm excited to see how he does for the rest of the season. In 9th place we had Pix and Franek. They did well considering they were contested in every game, and listen, they were talking about splitting this week. I don't know if that's kind of off the table now considering that they're doing fine as a duo and there's literally no reason for them to split, but we'll have to see how that evolves. One to keep an eye on for sure. And rounding out the top 10 we had Swizzy and Pixie. Now they only lost once off spawn at Battlewoods to Nero and Joshbot, so I do feel like they should have done a little bit more with the games that they had. They did win the final match, but it was too little too late. Not a terrible performance, but I'm not sure they'll be too happy with this placement. In terms of big names that finished outside of the top 10, we had Dharm and Th0mash in 13th. They were contested, so not really a big surprise. Sky and Scroll came in 19th, and this is a really weird one because they were contested, and you might think, oh, That's why they came 19th, fair enough. But no, they beat Vidil and Ju 4-1 off spawn. They had 5 games where they could have played it out completely normally. The reason why they struggled is because they simply could not make their end games count, which is incredibly uncharacteristic for this duo. Need I remind you, over the last 11 Divisional Cups, they have placed in the top 10 every single time. That streak has officially come to an end, which is a shame. It just wasn't their tournament. Of course, they're no longer landing at Battlewood Boulevard, they're now at Frosted Flats, but the strategy for the early game has stayed pretty much the same. One of them builds a big surge tower, they refarm, they stack heals. It's all the same stuff that we've been used to over the chapter, and ultimately this wasn't the problem. They just simply weren't getting to the end games, they weren't making them count. Their best placement was a 16th, which is so unlike them. I do think they're going to improve for the next Divisional Cup, and the one takeaway that we can make here is that they looked great off spawn. They also 4-0'd for Vidil and Ju in the most recent Divisional Cup. I know they've struggled in a couple of scrims, but it does look like they are the stronger team over at Frosted Flats. Listen, every team is allowed an off day, it's just a bit more noticeable when it's Sky and Scroll because they are usually so consistent. Vidil and Ju were only able to manage a 42nd place. We had iDrop and Fredoxy in 44th. iDrop actually crashed in the first 2 games, a very unfortunate tournament for them. And finally we had Combek and Seti in 48th after getting surprise contested by Ping and Haris. A pretty far from ideal cup for them. Here's how the European duos performed over on the NA Central Divisional Cup. As you can see, Scroll and Zany, the highest placing duo, Peterbot and Poyo, did come first overall. A couple of other bits of news to finish off the video. We had the Piz Cup this week. This was 6 games and it was the top 5 duos in each match that did earn money. Overall, we can see that Hutty and Fishix finished first on the leaderboard, so big credit to them. We also had the Eval Cup on Thursday, and there was a bit of a Scandinavian theme here. Chino and Pablo won a game, as did Truly and Opal. We also had Clapsy and Kield win a match. They've been looking pretty solid lately. Real ones will remember them from the last Reload Elite series where they won their heat, and we had Bevies and Frosty managing to take a match home as well. Subscribe to stay up to date with European Fortnite news. Thank you very much for watching this video. See you in the next one.